All right, let's start. Hello, everyone. My name is Craig Riddell, and I'm the Market Director for University of Phoenix and the Philadelphia region. I want to welcome everyone to our third of four webinars in celebration of Nursing Week 2021. Today's panel discussion will share some insights from some very successful male nurses. I also want to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and that please use the chat function if you have any specific questions or insights that you wish to share. We were additionally going to have a moderator and 3 panelists, but one of our panelists had to face a family emergency in the last 30 minutes. So we're hoping that Corey can join us, but if he can't, we're going to do fine with our 3 panel members that we have. There are more men in nursing today than at any time in our history, and that's good for male nurses and for the profession. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, 12% of RNs are now men, up from 2.7% male RNs in 1970. As the nation population ages, the Bureau projects nursing jobs are projected to grow 7% from 2019 to 2029, faster than the national average for all occupations, presenting a big opportunity, not for just men, but for any underrepresented group in nursing for that matter. Healthy demand, high salary potential, advancement opportunities, flexibility, and a wide variety of specializations are the benefits of choosing nursing as a career. Once again, a sincere thank you to all the nurses for all you do every day. And now I'm going to introduce our accomplished moderator of this panel, Randall Hamilton. Randall's current position for the University of Phoenix is the academic director for the Doctor of Nursing Practice, the DNP program. His clinical experience includes 20 years as a critical care nurse. After obtaining his FNP licensure in 2002, his 2 focus areas consisted of bariatric surgery practice and later a practitioner for an interventional pain practice. Randall has been teaching for the University of Phoenix for the past 12 years. He's a double graduate of the university, receiving both his BSN and MSN FNP degrees from the college. Randall obtained his Doctor of Nursing Practice from Frontier Nursing University in 2013. In 2015, he became the director of the MSN FNP program for University of Phoenix until transitioning to his current position as the academic director for the DNP program in 2020. Randall will now introduce the other panel members, and it's so wonderful they are all alumni with the University of Phoenix. Randall?
Hi, everyone. I am very honored to be one of the speakers among this accomplished group in this panel. I'd like to wish everyone out there in the audience Happy Nurses Week for all you nurses, and also to my fellow panelists. So what I'd like to do is introduce our panelists today, and I'm going to start with Harvey Williams. Harvey Williams is an established clinician and executive director. He's always been inspired by the benefits of his extraordinary teamwork and the endless possibilities that can come from truly working together. He's been fortunate enough in his career to have been influenced by some of the most phenomenal nurses, executives, and other professionals that have always challenged him to strive for more. In doing so, he's now become that person who's always focused on the big picture and how even the smallest detail can now make the biggest impact. Throughout his career as a volunteer, nursing assistant, emergency nurse, clinical director, and having the honor to participate in medical missions abroad, he's always made strides to connect himself with amazing teams that allow him to make the most positive impact on as many people in need as he can help. He's been obsessed with education and helping people succeed in achieving his RN, his BSN from the University of Phoenix, his MBA, and now he's on the journey of obtaining his PhD in human and social services. He genuinely relishes the chance to provide guidance, support, and mentorship to others striving for greatness in their academic and professional career. Harvey, did I cover everything? Is there anything else you want to add to that after that?
No, Dr. Hamilton, I appreciate the introduction. Happy Nurses Week, everyone. And I'm excited to participate in this. This is really positive. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce our next panelist, Carlos Ramirez. Carlos Ramirez is a highly skilled professional with more than 26 years practical experience in leadership, nursing management, healthcare administration of home health, hospice, hospital critical care, emergency department, intensive care unit, outpatient services, nursing orientation, training, college level nursing education, and public speaking. Carlos is a resident of Imperial and works for Access Care Home Health as the Regional Director of Operations for the Southwest region. He also works as a private motivational speaker. He graduated from the Imperial Valley College, IVC, with an associate degree in nursing in 1996. He has worked as a nurse and as a manager and director for El Centro Regional Medical Director, Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, Imperial Valley Home Health, and as an assistant nursing professor for IVC. Carlos has a bachelor's degree in nursing from 2006, a master's degree in nursing 2009, and is currently completing his doctoral degree in health administration, all from the University of Phoenix, with the anticipated graduation of 2021. Carlos is married to his wife for 13 years, Crystal Mora, also an RN, and also a UOP, University of Phoenix alumni. They have 3 children, Shakira, 17, Vincent, 15, and Carlos Jr., 7. Carlos loves music, concerts, plays guitar, loves cooking, traveling, sports cars, reading books, and exercising on a regular basis. Carlos, welcome. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, thank you. I'm glad to be in the panel today and discussing male nursing. It's something that we don't talk a lot in our business, but it's important, I think, and I'm looking forward for any questions on how we became nurses, male nurses, and there's a lot of stigma and things like that. So it will be fun to discuss. I can't wait to hear yourself, Dr. Hamilton, and Harvey, what your experiences were like.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for being here. And to the audience, if you have questions as we're talking, please put them into the chat and we'll address those as we're moving along. So we have some questions already prepared. I'm going to take on the first one and then pass it on to our other panelists. So our first question is, how did you become interested in the medical field and nursing? So I'm going to go ahead and start by saying that to me, this was an evolving journey. Remembering back to when I was 22 years old, long ways ago, to me, I was looking for a job with stability, with benefits. And at the time, our local hospital in Ohio was one of the largest employers. So I applied to the hospital for a nursing assistant position. At the time, there were not certified nursing assistants. It was kind of on-the-job training and training provided by the institution. So I took a job and became an orthopedic nursing assistant on an orthopedic ward. That ward was a total of 32 beds, or 32 beds, and each bed had 2 patients assigned to it. So I had my assignment was on one side of it. So I had the responsibility of, as a nursing assistant, helping 32 patients on that side. And as I took that job, to me, it was a job. It wasn't anything else but just a ways of getting a paycheck. But as I evolved as a nursing assistant, I noticed that I started getting the rewards that goes with caring for patients and supporting patients. And that led to me a desire to become a nurse. One of the stories that I think of fondly is that one evening I worked the 3 to 11 shifts. So my job was to go in, take the vitals when I got there, and then get patients up for their evening meal. And so I would go into the room and I would help the patients sit on the side of the bed, remembering most of them had fractured hips. I would stand in front of them, put my hands under their axilla, pivot them, put them in the orthopedic chair in preparation for their evening meal. And I remember this one particular lady. I don't remember her name, but let's call her Mrs. Jones. So Mrs. Jones was blind, and she had a fractured hip. She was elderly. And I remember talking to her every day when I went in, and I worked 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So on the fourth day, I went into her like I had the 3 previous days. And I said, Mrs. Jones, you know, how are you doing today? And I was having small talk with her. And I said, by the way, do you remember me? And she goes, oh, yes. She goes, you're that the nurse with the big hands. And I took that as a compliment because, you know, I provided her that safety of putting my hands under her axilla, supporting her, getting her up to the chair. And to me, that was one of the biggest rewards as a nursing assistant. And it was kind of my aha moment, because it was then I thought, this is my career. This is what I want to do. This is no longer a job. This is a profession. This is a career. This is a passion that I want to keep going. So this was kind of the driving force when I initially decided to become a nurse. So evolving forward, I became a nurse, and I was working in ICU for 20 years. And as I was working as a nurse, over time, I saw decisions that were being made that I may or may not have agreed with, but yet I didn't have any authority to do anything different other than following the orders, which you know I had. So I wanted again to have a bigger impact on healthcare. So I went back and got my MSN FNP through the University of Phoenix. And from there, I did have that impact. So from 2002 to 2013, I worked full-time in those 2 practices of bariatric surgery and interventional pain that I had not only the rewards of a nurse, but also the rewards of having a direct impact on their healthcare. So again, fast forward, in 2011, I thought, you know what? I still want to have a bigger impact, a different impact on healthcare, on nursing. And so I went back to school to get my Doctor of Nursing practice. And my goal was to not only help people, but to help populations and communities of people. So my initial goal was to help one patient or help patients on my unit, but now I'm thinking global. I'm thinking, what can I do in communities and healthcare settings to improve healthcare? So I went back and got my DNP. And in 2013, I took the position of nurse practitioner, or as the family nurse practitioner director for the University of Phoenix, and participated in training nurse practitioners and adding my pearls that I have gained over those decades into the curriculum to help them to become healthcare providers. And most recently, within the last 1.5 years, I became the academic director for the DNP program. And again, sharing things that I have picked up over the years to contribute to the Doctor of Nursing practice curriculums. So my journey continues. I still have a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to contribute. So I would say that's kind of my journey in becoming how I became interested in the medical field and nursing. So Harvey, I'm going to pass it on to you, and if you can share your kind of your journey and how you ended up to be where you are today.
I'd be happy to. Thank you for sharing. And you guys can call me Will for the panel. My journey, I swear it'll get a little bit more condensed as I go, but It honestly started when I was about 5. Like when I was a kid, I had really bad asthma. Like, it's still not great, but I had really, really bad asthma. And my mother and I were living in Southern Maryland at the time, and they had these asthma camps. There's things like she drops us off, and spend like the whole day there. And these pediatricians and pediatric doctors, or sorry, pediatric nurses would like work with us on like breathing techniques and, you know, how to do this in the pool and like all this other kind of stuff. And it was great. They were just caring and compassionate. And that's like the first kind of spark. So honestly, I knew I was always wanted to be in the medical field, right? Didn't know exactly where, but just somewhere in the medical field. So when I went to high school, we had kind of electives, like kind of sub programs that you could do. And I picked health and human services, no brainer. I got my CNA when I was like 17. I started working at a local hospital here, kind of some overlap with Dr. Hamilton. I was on an orthopedic floor as well. And I worked the kind of 7 to 3 shift. You know, and since I was a big guy, you know, I'm the one that was taking the CPMs off of the knee patients. And that was how I started my day every day. And just kind of went from there. And kind of tragic, one of the patients ended up coding one time. And in our hospital, you know, the emergency department crew ran upstairs and kind of ran it. But, you know, I knew CPR as a big guy, I could do it. And I didn't leave the room. I'm helping out with CPR. The emergency techs are watching me. The nurses are there. And like a day or so after that, my director pulls me into her office saying, they want to recruit you for downstairs. I was like, oh, okay, sure. Let's just a little more cash and we'll do it. So I became an emergency tech. And it wasn't until I worked with some great nurses before then. But it wasn't until kind of seeing those nurses in action, especially some of the male nurses. Probably give him a shout out if he was on the panel. But one of the male nurses that kind of inspired me in the path that I'm on, Bill Carnell, was working night shift. And he was just fantastic, super knowledgeable, funny, didn't take things too seriously. I mean, it was just a great command of her profession to see the compassion, but also see the knowledge base. So I was originally wanted to be a pediatrician. That's the direction I was going to go. But after kind of working with Bill and trying to get into nursing school, and I ended up applying to the nursing school that he graduated from, it kind of went from there. And then kind of after I started as an emergency nurse, I wanted more. Was able to get my bachelor's from this prestigious university, and then still wanted more, got some management roles and kind of kept growing. And then just to kind of tail into where I'm at today, I noticed, you know, and maybe some of our colleagues can kind of share, you know, just because you're a nurse and you're like in leadership, you know, sometimes you don't always get the full seat at the table. They want you to sometimes stay in your nursing wheelhouse. You know, you're the clinical guy. Let's not talk about the business aspect. And I noticed that in my director of clinical services role that, you know, it wasn't always a two-way street in the business conversation. So that was the driver of getting my MBA, to kind of prove that I can talk both languages and we move forward, that I can be compassionate, wear my heart on my sleeve, but also be fiscally responsible. And then just want to make myself a well-rounded leader and an inspiration. I wanted to get my PhD. That journey, thankfully, is coming to an end. I'm happy to report I defend on Thursday. But yeah, that's kind of how I get started, and seeing this thing till the end. And honestly, maybe it sounds silly, maybe it's just a spirit of the week, but in thinking about the men and women who inspired me to be where I am today, I truly hope I can give back. And one of the colleagues or people that reports to me, or hell, in this type of panel, that I can do the same for somebody else that's kind of finding their path in our field.
Yeah, well said, Will. Very nice. Carlos, can you share your journey?
Thank you for sharing your story, Will. Very inspirational. Like most of us, I think we have that moment in our lives that make us, you know, helps us make a decision. For me, I remember as a little kid, I always wanted to be a veterinarian, right? I grew up in Mexico before we immigrated to the United States when I was 15 years old. So back in Mexico, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I came to the US to high school, and, you know, I was really into English being my second language. I was listening to English music, you know, 80s music. And then I fell in love with rock, Scorpions, and Ozzy Osbourne, stuff like that in the 80s. But that's how I learned English a lot too. I practiced by reading the lyrics and the cassettes and things like that. So in high school, I met a group of friends that were also into rock. So we play music. I play guitar. I love to play guitar. I was a rhythm guitar player and the singer. Mm. So that helped me kind of lose my fear of, singing in public or, speaking in public. Not that we had a big concert, but with our high school friends. But senior year came and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to be a rock star? Probably not where I live, little community, rural community. I knew that would mean if I had to live to LA or San Diego or somewhere big. We had a career fair and they asked us to choose 3 professions that we were interested. So I chose paleontology. I love dinosaurs and, Discovery Channel stuff. I chose also mortician. I always had a interest in what do morticians do and what kind of job is that, and nursing. So paleontology was amazing, but I didn't see myself being a paleontologist and having to get grants and things like that, the way the paleontologist explained to the group. I went to the next class, which was the mortician. And, it was very interesting job. And, you always have customers, but I didn't see myself, working with only with dead people all the time. I didn't see fun in that. It will be hard to have many friends or a girlfriend back then. So nursing, was very interesting. We have a very good local college, like I explained, the Imperial Valley College, where I graduated from. I also was teaching there for about 8 years. I taught clinical practice in the hospital. And that was, to me, the easiest way out. My parents were not making a lot of money. So I figured, what can I do that is local that and that's the path that I chose, nursing. So I knew right after high school that I wanted to be a nurse. I spoke to the counselor in the college, went directly into nursing prerequisites. And I remember when I passed, my most toughest classes back then were anatomy, physiology, and also microbiology. So once I passed those, I'm like, wow, I can do anything. If I can pass these classes, everything else is so easy. Little did I know that nursing is 10 times harder than that. Went into the program. I started, I remember, with 36 students. I graduated with 6. The program was tough. You get the best of the best at the end, right? But after that, I really took a passion for nursing. I really loved every aspect of it, helping. I was not afraid of jumping into any procedure situation that I had an opportunity to work on. And that helped me a lot because in 3rd semester, one of my nursing professors kind of got me a job to work in the hospital. My prior experience was only working, making hamburgers in a fast food restaurant. And prior to that, there was a UOP commercial that came in 2017 about this young kid working in the fields. That was my story. I worked in Coachella in the grape fields when I was in high school because there was no job available. So a friend told me, I'm going to work in the fields this summer if you want to join me. So I jumped in there and, taught me a big lesson on hard work, how hard that work is. My respects to anybody that works in agriculture in the field. It's tough work. But that was kind of the story with UOP that came in on that commercial in 2017. Going back to getting the job, my professor recommended me to work in the ER from all places. And the ER is like a place that attracts a lot of male nurses from the hospital, more than compared like to OB, right? ER is like where the fun is. I did see an increase in male nurses after I graduated, probably 5-10 years later, that there was a little more than before. I think part of it has to do with those shows, the ER show that came in with George Clooney and some of those types of shows. I think they show that nurses are not only doctors or paramedics or firemen, you can also be a nurse and still be cool, There's a lot of stigma with being a male nurse. Many people think, that you are gay or that you have other, things that only a women have to do this job. But, we are able to break those stigmas and show, hey, anybody can be a nurse if you have the heart to it. I worked in the ER for about 10 years. That was my passion. I couldn't see myself working anywhere else. I love every act. I worked 12-hour shifts, night shift, usually young nurses starting the night. And within 3 years, I became the charge nurse, the ER manager, and then I became the ER director for critical care services. That's when my management started getting more educated. During that time also, I joined the UOP. They had a FlexNet program where you do part-time online and part-time. We had to drive to San Diego, which is an hour and a half from El Centro to do that program. And I mean, it sounds kind of like that's easy, but remember, I'm talking about 15 years ago, there was not a lot of internet, a lot of computers. It sounds crazy, but I mean, it was just the beginnings of what we currently have. And look at the pandemic, it taught us that online nursing and online education is actually many times the way to go, right? So for me, that was a blessing living in such a rural community, be able to do that and finish the bachelor's. I continued with the master's shortly after, within a year. I took some, I moved from working in the hospital in the ER, went to work at ICU at the nearby hospital in Pioneers. Did that for a couple of years, and then I got an offer to work for home health. Back then I had left Central Hospital. I didn't want to do management. I got a little burnout after 3 years of being a director, and I just wanted to be a happy nurse. You work, you see your patients, you go home, and if somebody calls in sick, it's not your problem. But when you love what you do and you know so much, things kind of bring you back, and you have to get, use your skills and your knowledge that you work so hard for to attain. So I started doing quality reviews and stuff like that for the hospital. The job opportunity came to work home health, and they needed a director of nurses. So I took it, and it was like a great opening because I did that for 2 years. And then I started working for my current employer, Accent Care Home Health, the 4th largest home health organization in the US. I started working in El Centro branch, and we only had 65 patients when I started. When I left the branch, after 9 years, we had 800 patients. So we grew immensely. Part of my knowledge in the community, knowing so many doctors and hospitals, working with so many people. I was also teaching part-time for the college. So I was able to build such a strong team with former students, former people that work with me in the hospital. And I think that was the secret sauce. They always ask me, how do you do it in El Centro to be so successful and with the growth? So I think part of that has to do with building strong teams, being a good leader, leading by example, those things that we learn in our higher education degrees. 3 years ago, I took another promotion with Accent Care, became the regional director of operations, which is what I currently do. I oversee El Centro, my hometown branch, and also 3 branches in San Diego, 2 in San Diego, 1 in San Marcos. So I work one week off in El Centro, 1 week in San Diego. During that time, again, it's been my passion. I never thought that I will be so passionate about leadership and management. When I was a brand new nurse, people will say, oh, I will never be a manager. I only want to be at the bedside. With my background in critical care, I mean, I have amazing stories of saving lives and some sad stories too, but that's how you grow and learn, what to do in situations. And I think I really had that passion for education, and that's why I decided to go back and I remember when I graduated with my master's, I didn't go to the ceremony for the bachelor's because to me, the bachelor's was just a stepstone. To me, I needed to do the master's. That was my final goal. And I went to the University of Phoenix, Cardinal Stadium, huge, thousands of people graduating. It was amazing. And I remember seeing when they were graduating, they were awarding the associate's degree, then the bachelor's, and then I'm all proud because I had the master's degree. And then there was a small crew after us, and those were the doctoral degrees. And who are those guys? And they have some fancy robes and very nice hats, the octagon, the velvet tam. And I really am like, I want one of those. I should give me one of those hats, So immediately after graduation, I called my counselor and asked, hey, what do I need to do? What kind of doctoral degrees you had? They had a PhD program and the DSA that I have right now, Doctor in Health Administration. And that's kind of what motivated me. I spoke to my employer back then, and they assisted me to go to school. And it's a long year for me. It's been almost 8 years since I started. I changed my share. I also changed my model, changed my study. But I think I finally, the last 3 years, I really know what I'm doing. I have a great chair, Dr. Rice. And this is the time for me to complete this degree. It's long overdue. And again, I was explaining earlier to the panel before we got live that it's been pretty much a marathon for me, working so much and being so busy with teaching part-time. Before now, I don't teach part-time. I don't have the time because I travel so much. But it's a journey that has been, I just love, being, reading articles and research, and it just keeps you so updated. And so, so just like some way in nursing that we had to get CEUs every 2 years, right? To show that we have our competencies up to date. It's the same thing for those of us that want higher degrees. You really have to be updated and reading the new research, the new, findings and discoveries out there, because that's what makes this fun. And that's my story.
Excellent story, excellent journey, Carlos. Thank you for that. I'm curious, Carlos, so you said you would you knew that you wanted to be a nurse right out of high school. Well, I'm kind of curious with you. To me, it wasn't until I was actually exposed to a hospital setting and patients. But how about you? When did you realize you wanted to be a nurse?
That was the same time when I.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was at the same time. It wasn't like when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a pediatrician, to be a physician. It wasn't until I was in the hospital setting, first as a volunteer at Doctors Community Hospital, then, as a CNA at Shady Grove Adventist, and kind of seeing those nurses run around. Some are still great colleagues. And I was like, and you understand the job a little bit more, and you see yourself fitting into, kind of healthcare when you see somebody that, looks like you, or actually, that kind of thing. So it wasn't until I was exposed, I was like, yeah, I think I could do that.
Yeah. It was kind of the same with me. So there's a question, I want to answer that. There's a question that says, do you feel you were treated differently in nursing school, being one of the few males attending? And I remember in all of the, my, associate degree, bachelor's, master's, FNP, to me, I felt like the few males in our programs, we stood out. So all of our faculty knew us by name far, before they do most of the females by name, because there were so few of us in the program. But I would say I didn't feel like I was treated differently as a nurse in school. I was just one of the students and blended right in. So Will and Carlos, how about you? What was your experience?
I certainly did. So I went to nursing school in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I don't know if anybody really is familiar. It's a very rural kind of area, sort of outside-ish of Pittsburgh. I was the first Black male to graduate that program. And, it was just kind of the time. It wasn't necessarily, honestly, I was more cognizant of me being a person of color than being a male nurse, right? The only time where it really kind of came front and center is we had OB rotations, and you had to either attend the C-section or see a live birth in order to kind of go through the class. So literally I'm there, and guys looking at me like, I'm here for class, dude. It's that kind of thing. You're kind of aware that you're a male in those situations, but it wasn't necessarily treated, differently in a negative context. You're just more aware of it. You're aware that right now, this doesn't seem like the norm. Your class is 95% female, and you're just more cognizant of it. I wouldn't say it was a negative, but certainly I was mindful of it.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I do feel I was treated a little different, and also being a Hispanic nurse, right? One thing I tell you this, I always complain with my bosses. I felt I worked double than anybody else, especially when you speak Spanish. For me in a Hispanic community, everybody, oh, Carlos, can you please translate for me? So I'm doing my job and my patients, and yet I had to discharge everybody else's. Every doctor will pick me up to go again, I didn't mind, because that's my job and I love what I do. But it becomes, you realize I am working 150% when everybody's working 100 or less than that, right? So that was one thing. Also, being a male nurse, and if you're in good shape, you are the picker-upper, the lifter-upper, right? Oh, we need a male to help us bring this patient. So you're always asked to be lifting people up, rolling people over. It just kind of comes with the job. And, we have to watch our backs. Thank God I never injured my back working for so many years in the hospital, pushing so many gurneys. Sometimes I will have a little bit of a backache, but I always exercise and try to be in shape. That's I think what I see. I saw questions too that says, how can the public help share awareness and remove any gender bias in nursing? Again, I think the movies and things like that have really opened up more the idea that nurses can do great in male nurses can do great in nursing. I remember that movie too with Ben Stiller, where he was a male nurse and everybody was picking on him, making fun of him. And many of those things I sympathize, but I never, was put down. I guess I will say, we had different generations of nurses. And I did feel that back then, to me, some of the older nurses that were not used to working with male nurses did have a little bit of bias, thinking that we are not as smart or whatever. But my job, our work, and our care, it really makes the difference. And to me, imagine how, what a proud moment for me was that I immigrated from Mexico. I learned English as a second language. And at one point I was actually in charge of the biggest hospital in my community. I was actually the director of, so I'm like, wow, never in my dreams I thought I would be in charge of this. Another great kind of self-awareness moment. After the University of Phoenix commercial, I started getting a lot of calls from different universities and high schools and places that wanted me to speak for them. And I was invited to the University of Delaware, where Joe Biden actually graduated from. And I went there. I was a paid speech, but I spoke to the faculty, 500 PhD doctoral degree professors, and another group in a hospital there. And I couldn't, it was like a out of body moment when I'm speaking in Delaware. So I'm thinking, who knew this little kid from a little town in Mexico, in Baja California, will go all the way to Delaware to speak in English, to this great group of faculty about my experiences, the road to success that I follow, going to the. So to me, that was great. And this is what I love to do when I go to, especially high schools, because that's when it got to me that I want to be a nurse. I like to inspire those kids at that age to let them know that, especially Hispanic kids, we have the lowest educational achievements. I was looking at some data on that, and looks like for 2017, only 14% of Hispanics have some college degree. Only 8% have an associate's degree, 12% bachelor's, 3.9 master's, and professional degree, doctoral or higher is 0.5 only. So I'm like, what can I do to bring the awareness that, yes, we can do more than, like Cesar Chavez says, sí se puede, right? Yes, we can. What else can we do to get out of those stigmas? And I remember a lot of my high school friends, when I was getting ready to go to college for nursing, they were ready to go get a job, work somewhere, grocery store or something, because they wanted the car to get the girls. To me, it's like, no, I want a degree in education to get out of poverty and do something with my life. So, anything that I had the opportunity to inspire young kids, I really love to do that, because I think that's when the moment comes that they could see somebody, hopefully, that will inspire them to take that challenge.
I think, Carlos, you answered this question, but I have something I can say, and then we'll see if Will does too. But there's a question that says, having come so far in your careers, what advice would you give your younger self, or what advice do you wish someone would have shared with you? That's a great question, because we kind of go on this life journey not knowing what is ahead of us, and we do the best we can, and we follow this path that sometimes we don't know where it's going to lead. I have to say that my decision to go into nursing was probably, outside of marrying my wife and having children, probably the best decision that I could have ever made. Throughout the recessions that I've been in, and economical upturns and downturns, nursing has been that stable rock. There's always been workforce. There's always been a career path that we can go to, and there's always been rooms for advancement. And just like Carlos said, there's always places to go and new journeys to go to succeed in your career paths. But I would say that my message to my younger self, I battled a lot over the stigma of being a nurse. I played football in high school, and I'm a pretty big guy. And the stigma, or the perception that males shouldn't be nurses, was pretty prevalent in the 1980s. And I probably did a lot of battled myself on whether or not this was the right path to go. But I would say that my message to anyone thinking about going into nursing, if you're a male, don't let that hinder you from doing what you want to do in life. It's been a super success for me. And Will, what are your thoughts on that? What would you tell your younger self if you could?
So I don't, like I said, I think once I was exposed, I knew I wanted to be a nurse, right? So I don't, it wasn't so much the stigma, even though, in the emergency department, it's just like kind of Carlos mentioned, male nurses kind of gravitate towards that, towards the ICU, your more kind of critical care positions. It was the advancement part. I think there is, I think that's like with any type of minority. I'm not even talking about racially, but just any group that is underrepresented amongst the masses. So with us male nurses, right, you want to advance, you want to prove yourself, show that you belong, whether that's more experience or getting degrees or what have you. And there was a bit of a gap from when I graduated from the University of Phoenix. When I graduated nursing school, we're talking like a 4-year gap. I would have pushed myself harder to get my bachelor's sooner, subsequently pushing myself to get my master's sooner, and ideally pushing myself to get my doctorate sooner, to kind of get where ultimately I wanted to be quicker. I mean, I know there's plenty of people literally taking classes, wrapping up, you know, end of semester assignments right now, who range the gamut, 30, 40s, 50s, 60s. Mm-hmm. But if I could tell one thing to younger Will, do it quicker, focus, eliminate some of these distractions, and just go for it. You know, that's probably the biggest advice I would say.
Yeah. Carlos, what about you? What would you?
I second that. I think I would have gotten into my bachelor's and master's sooner, and therefore the doctoral degree sooner. At the same time, though, I think there has to be some personal growth, you know, to mature and do all that. So I think that what I have found, I think that's the basis to my success in what I've done has been that I've done the hands-on work. So some people are lucky that they can go through school and they don't have to work or whatever, and that's great. But the edge that some of us have is that, hey, I've done this job. I've done it back and forth. I mean, many times when I'm having hard times with my current job, you know, I do nursing and I do operations. I do the, you know, finances, also outcomes. And that, so I'm a dual, you know, operator. And when we have hard times, I always bring the same story to some of my, you know, executive directors who are struggling or feeling pressure. Like, you think you have pressure, think about a patient in the ICU with two chest tubes and 4 IVs, Foley catheter, with a cardiac monitor that shows this little tiny line, and the family doesn't know that person is going to make it, intubated. That person has problems. Our problems are temporary, and we can find a way, and we always find a way to continue. You know, I love the nursing process. I always apply that to my personal life. You know, we have the nursing process, the API, assess, diagnose, plan, implement, and evaluate. That's how I tackle life. I assess the situation, I diagnose it, I make a plan for it, I implement the plan, and if it doesn't work, you reinvent it. And that has been really my solid basis on how I do what I do. You know, the reason for saying I would like to have started sooner, you know, some people have asked me many times after my presentations or speeches, you know, Carlos, do you believe leaders are born or are they created? And I used to think leaders were born until I read a book, and the author was saying that he had the same question, and his answer was, I have never met a leader that was not born. So that kind of changed my perception in the sense that some people are born with that leadership in them. And I think I'm one of them, because since I was a little kid, I was always the leader of the pack to do something, you know, to organize things. And I know I do that well, obviously. But having the education and the background now has really expanded that ability, right? I told you that I hired some of my nursing students to work in my home health agency here in El Centro. I'm proud to say my director here right now, she was my student. Another director that I have in an office in Northridge, he was my student. Some of the people in the company that have expanded outside El Centro, many of them were students or were employees of mine. So I think I have a very good ability to create leaders and grow leaders. And that inspires me more to do more and learn more. I'm always reading books on leadership. I love the 5 Levels of Leadership by Maxwell. I just finished reading the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I really like that book too. And when I read a good book, I buy it and send it to my directors, because I want them to learn what I'm learning. We have to continue, right? Educating ourselves, because there's always more knowledge out there to do what we do.
Very good. So another question we want to propose to us is what our typical day looks like. And does that even exist for us? And I would say probably we've all got different perceptions of that. So I would say my day when I was in practice was patient-centered. And I would say most nurses would say that. Currently in my position, it's student-centered. Every day is different. So different things come up. So that certainly affects what I do. The University of Phoenix has strategic goals, and those goals I try to follow in my practice as the director of the DNP program. And of those goals, there's 3 of them that I adhere to. One of those is the university says we want to fit into students' busy lives. We all know that students work, they have families, they have school, they have responsibilities, children. And so we need, as a university, in the position that I have, is to work around those areas. Another of the strategic goals is make them career ready. And education is part of that. So an example of that is when we revised the nurse practitioner program to make it online, one of the things we do is we have live models, and those live models allow students to do gynecological exams, prostate exams, breast exams, pediatric exams. And so a lot of schools do this virtually. They do it on mannequins, but we didn't feel like that was the appropriate thing to do for our school. So we have live models, we have residencies where students come in from all over the country to do those practices. So make them, so that's part of making them career ready. And then the third component of the strategic goal for UOP is be easy to work with. And so to me, that means showing kindness, showing flexibility, showing that I'm available and accessible to students and faculty as they're needed. Other things in my day is supporting our faculty. I attend multiple meetings. Most of those surround curriculum issues. So my day kind of changes depending on what's kind of going on with students and faculty that guides that. So Will, how about you? What shapes your day in your...
2 words, honestly, emotional intelligence and mindfulness, I think. I too, Carlos, am in the home health space for one of your competitors for LHC Group. And, you know, just like kind of Carlos mentioned, you know, problems are relative, right? And they're all a matter of perspective. So it's different than we were all at the bedside and, you know, somebody was coding, somebody was critical. That's a different type of thing. With home health and our day-to-day, the problems can be worked through. And what I spend a lot of my typical day teaching is to teach other people without maybe the breadth of leadership experience or without the scope of problems that I've been fortunate enough to handle in my career. How do they manage them? And not just manage them to put out the immediate fire, but how to do it in such a way that the next time they inevitably face that fire, they can handle it just as they would if I was doing it, right? I think part of being not just a nurse, but a leader, as it sounds like we all are and have kind of progressed in our career, is the teaching, being a true servant leader. So our typical day, you know, Carlos and I would probably like share war stories talking about, you know, our outstanding AR, or we're short on staffing, or this hospital didn't sit us a face-to-face, like all those normal headaches that we're popping Advil for. But when those fires arise, are we taking the time, literally day over day, hour over hour, to teach those, you know, that report to us? That's the typical, that's the part that takes a little bit extra effort. So that's how I would kind to do it. What did I know the question or the sub question was, like, does a typical day exist? If a typical day is putting down fires and then yes, it's just kind of is what it is, Monday through Friday. And if we're lucky on Saturday and Sunday, but that's what a lot of it consists of day to day.
Yes.
And Carlos?
Very true, very true. And again, I'm thankful for my ER background. You know, I remember one time, you just gave me a flashback, Will. I was a young ER nurse, maybe 6 months to a year in the working in the ER. And I remember my ER manager walking in with a little notebook in her, you know, and we had a massive car accident, multiple injuries, and everybody's crazy running. And being a young ER nurse, you're kind of learning what you're doing, just doing procedures, not knowing exactly why. Just following the doctor and the senior nurses. And I'm going, and she comes in with a smile, you know. And I said, Naina, you're always so calm and relaxed when, you know, and we're out here. He's like, Carlos, what's the worst thing that can happen to these patients? And well, one of them could die. And if they do you know how to take care of that? Yes, I do. So you should feel confident with what you're doing. And that kind of gave me that perspective. And since then, I'm like, I'm going to be like her. And I was like her, because when I became the charge nurse and the manager, people will tell me the same. You know, there's chaos, but it's controlled chaos. Like for the not people that work there, they think, oh my God, this place is a madhouse. For those of us that work there, we know how to navigate. It's like an ant farm. You see the ants all over, but they know what they're doing. They have their jobs, right? And that's kind of, I remember having the pleasure of coming to a completely busy day shift ER, because I was going to do the night shift. And my first goal when I started, the first 20 minutes was clean up the ER, move things around. And it was just, it makes you feel so much in control when you have gurneys out of the way, chairs out of the way, things like that. And I remember some house supervisors that will walk and come to the department, you know, a shift change, and like, oh my God, we're so busy. Who's in charge today? Oh, Carlos. Yes, you know, to me, like, oh, wow, you know, they know that when Carlos works, things are going to be fixed and there's not going to be drama or chaos or unnecessary complaints. So, you know, that's kind of, I agree with Will that it's it's controlled chaos. And to the point, you're right, Will, every day to me is like, I think most of us probably do 50-hour weeks, you know, at least.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm used to that. I embrace that and have to have that also that family time, you know. So I'm making sure after Fridays, I have two phones, my work phone and I have my personal phone. Work phone goes in the drawer. I don't want to, and people
Same
that know
here, buddy.
exactly, exactly. And because besides family, we both have to finish our PhDs,
Exactly.
and we have to spend that time. So it is a lot of time management, but at the same time, we need to have that moment for ourselves. Like for me, it's exercise, playing music, going to. I love cooking, so cooking with my wife, things like that. You know, you have to have that nice balance. Otherwise, and that's some of the questions that I ask when I hire new managers. How do you work with stress? Like, what do you do to decompress? Because this job can really cause you to have. That's part of my dissertation. I'm studying, occupational stress on nurse directors in home health.
That's a great
There's been a lot of studies in hospitals, burn units, ERs. There's thousands of those, but specific for home health, I haven't found one. So I want to hopefully be one of the first ones to study that specific group.
That's a great topic.
Thank you. That was awesome. So we're winding down. We have about 8 minutes left, but want to kind of talk about the hurdles for men in nursing. And I think each of us could talk about maybe some challenging issues that have come up, going into the nursing field as males. And, my perception, my thinking, if for males that are going into this field, that there needs to be attributes that we need to have, whether male or female, to be a nurse. Those attributes are nurturing, caring, empathy, sympathy, warmth, compassion. Those are elements that we need to have, whether we're male or female, because nursing is not a completely task-oriented job like other areas. If you want to be an engineer, or if you want to be a plumber or electrician, those are task-oriented. But that human touch that we apply as nurses, we need to have those attributes. It's no accident that nursing is considered the most trusting profession year after year after year. And I believe it's because we've developed trust with patients because of these attributes. Whatever field we're working in, that doesn't, whether you're in a hospital or whether you're in education or whether you're in a home health, doesn't matter. Those attributes still play a huge factor as a nurse in our field. So, and I would say another hurdle that I had early in my career is that perception that males can't provide equivalent care as females can. We can. We can have those same attributes, caring, compassion that patients have, or that females have. And then finally, early in my career, I don't know if you guys experience this, but were you ever asked, why are you a nurse? Did you fail the doctor school and are going to be a nurse because of that? Or, I want a female nurse, not a male nurse. Early in my career, I experienced that. But now, physicians are male and female, nurses are male and female, and we're gaining in popularity. So those are kind of my comments with hurdles. And Will and Carlos, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. It's to kind of sum what you were saying, Dr. Hamilton, it's pushing it back against stigmas. I've been asked, I'm sure Carlos has, I've been asked that question about, why didn't you just, become a physician, especially since my background, but I've been asked that by other nurses. I've been asked that by physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, and doctors themselves, right? And pushing back against all types of stigmas, especially what you mentioned about the compassion, is big. I don't know if it's just when you're working critical care, and they see a male walk in, they think that maybe we're a little bit more iron-hearted or, just don't have that empathy within us. But just like the both of you, I'm sure, I still think about patients that have died on me a decade ago. And if the wind is right and a certain song's on, I'll get a little emotional. It's just, we have it in us, but that pushing back against that stigma. And I think the only way to do it, to kind of merge a question I think I saw in the chat box, is to understand that representation matters. Not just people of color, not just male nurses, but we have to exemplify what truly it means to be a nurse in our everyday actions. Because when more and more people see that, they understand that we're not all built the same, that there is a through line with nurses, that we have this empathy, this compassion, no matter if you're male, female, person of color or not. So that's probably the biggest hurdle. And it's different maybe a little bit in leadership too. I think almost the stigma can get a little bit higher because now we're directing people. Right now we do call the shots, so they think we're even colder. No, I still have a heart. I still care, but there's other factors influencing my decision. I'm sure Carla probably speak to the same thing.
Great point.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. I mean, obviously, being male nurses, we've gone through some of the similar situations. The three words that I will use, not only for male nurses, but anybody, will be, you have to have care, compassion, and concern. Really be concerned when the patient is telling you a story, if you want to really help them. And that's what I teach when I hire new nurses. Sometimes I have the privilege of still training them. I also, when I was a director in one branch, I love to get a group of new nurses and give them I created this, I call it the, you know, home health 101 and customer and service excellence. And I went through over all these points and how do you really, you know, I give them stories, the best stories I can tell you for me. I can tell you stories, oh, we saved this baby, we revived this other patient. Those are great. But the ones that patients were super grateful were when somebody was super cold in an ICU room. Hospitals are always freezing, no matter where you go. And you will have this poor family with a sick mom, you know, in the ICU. And somebody will come and say, Carlos, you know, can you give us a blanket for my mom? It's so cold in here. And it's busy all the time. I could say, you know, I have time for that. I'm taking care of a patient coding next door or whatever. I will always take the time, run all the way to the ER where they had a nice warm blanket warmer, and take a couple of blankets and bring them back to the patient. And I will always give one to the family member that asked for the blanket. And it was always the same reaction. I will put them over and be like, oh my God, this is amazing. The next day I had food, I had posters. Carlos is the best nurse in the world. We love him. They wanted to introduce me to their daughter, all these great things. And think about it. It wasn't because I gave medication or I was taking care of 4 IV drips. It was because I did a humane thing to them. I gave them a warm blanket in the moment they needed it the most. And that's what I try to teach. You know, not everybody can be a nurse. You have to have those 3 things: care, compassion, and concern. Because if you don't, you can be the smartest nurse or the smartest doctor. I'm pretty sure we know a lot of them, that I cannot work with that person. He may be super smart and have a doctoral degree in medicine, but he's not my doctor and I will not see that person, right? So it's about who you are as a person and how you treat others. And I always like to do that, treat others like I want to be treated.
Golden rule.
Exactly. And again, with those things on the being a male nurse, it's many times I remember female coworkers will tell me, oh, I'm glad we have a male nurse because we need some testosterone here. And that's another, you know, I couldn't say that, but I mean, female employee, you know, they could say, oh, you know, I like to have more testosterone, you know, and I know what they mean, you know, sometimes, but I hear the same thing, for example, with paramedics, where that's the opposite. There's like 99% male in paramedics. And also they need sometimes estrogen, I guess, to break the you know, the headbutt between the groups. But it's just, you know, having going back to what you said, Will, very important, emotional intelligence. That's the key to success in many of these situations. You know, I tell new managers, you know, many of the sayings I learned over the years, you cannot eat the whole elephant at once, and learn to choose your battles, and depending on what's going on that day or that week or that month in the situation. So that's what creates that balance in that environment where people are being, besides working, they're also hopefully learning and being educated on how to handle situations. So, because I'm always thinking, who's going to replace me? You know, when I'm doing this job, I want to have a replacement. So when I move forward into something else, one of the hardest things I had to do was to leave my branch in El Centro. I told you we grew that branch from 65 patients to 800. My nickname in El Centro was El Rey, which means the king. That was the CEO back then called me, because of the growth and the great improvement we did. But and to me, when they asked me, I need you to leave El Centro and go, you know, San Diego and San Marcos, and like, it was a scary thing for me. Like, I don't want to leave this great branch that we built, but I was lucky that I had a good team and I had somebody to replace me that's continuing to do a good job and carry that baton. And it's allowed me to replicate some of the great things we did here in other areas. So, you know, it was a win-win.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we are at time. It's on the hour. So, Craig, I will turn this over back to you to conclude. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure and an honor being on the panel with you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Good meeting you, Carlos.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to all three of you. We have an expression in Philadelphia, the power of three, and the three of you exemplified that today, especially with one panelist not being able to join us. So kudos to you. The content was rich. I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you again to the three of you, for Ava and Danielle, our team in Philly, for helping set this up, and also all the nurses that are still watching and that are out there. Thank you for, again, all you do every day. Celebrate yourself, celebrate Nursing Week. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, good meeting you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.